In my first year of adulthood, I chose to reinvent my life forever. How did I do it, you might be wondering? Well, why tell you when I can just show you? I got a perm. Hello, lovely people. It is August 14th, 2022, and as of this week, I've officially passed the 1 year mark of moving to New York City, which in my eyes also marks the 1 year anniversary of being a full-blown adult, which saying that out loud is absolutely crazy to think about. But as I sit here, settling into my second apartment, my first ever solo adult apartment, one with walls that, yes, actually reach the ceiling and glorious natural light, which, by the way, having gone an entire year without natural light essentially, I didn't realize how important it is to me. Would not recommend going without it. But with that being said, I just wanted to have a pretty casual conversation to kind of reflect on the past year, the first full year of adulting, on the growth, the change, the lessons I learned, and who knows, hopefully some of the insights or lessons that I share will be beneficial for those of you watching. And if not, hopefully I'm able to at least encourage some of you to take a moment, to take an afternoon and reflect on your own life, on how far you've come in your own ways. So without further ado, I wanted to think about this from two perspectives, the external and the internal. So what do I mean by that? When I think about it externally, there were three significant life decisions that I intentionally chose to make during my first year as an adult. And no, I don't mean getting a perm or 2 tattoos, though honestly, the perm has changed my life. Would highly recommend getting one if you've even thought about it before. But the actual significant life decision, the first one I made that would honestly be the driver for the next two, was choosing to quit my first job out of college in investment banking. And it might not seem like a huge deal to some, might not seem life-changing. And to be fair, it definitely wasn't a decision I thought I'd have made during my first year as an adult, much less 6 months in, because to me, it was letting go of not just a job, but of a life path that I'd invested so much time, energy, myself into attaining. So to let go of all that, to let go of parts of myself, was easily the hardest decision I've made in my life at 22, which I recognize is a super privileged statement to be able to make. The second life-changing decision that I chose to make during my first year as an adult, the change you're actually all experiencing live as you watch this video, was my decision to start a YouTube channel. Which, to be fair, on the surface, it might not seem like a big deal. After all, and I looked this up beforehand, there are 114 million YouTube channels out there, which if you took that number and made it a country, it would be the 12th largest country in the world, just behind Ethiopia, which to me is absolutely mind-blowing. Statistics aside, my decision to start a YouTube channel was far more than that. It was a decision to start actualizing a childhood dream I'd had my entire life. A decision to start living my own life. A life more authentic to me. Growing up, I honestly watched more YouTube than TV or movies. And at 23, that's still the case. The YouTubers I watched were the role models in my life when I didn't have any immediate ones. The same people who inspired me and helped me believe that I could be more, that I could rise above circumstances that were outside of my control. The same people who helped me feel less lonely. The same people who helped me heal. The same people who helped me become who I am today. So naturally, I grew up envisioning myself becoming a YouTuber, of having a similar impact on others. And not once did it cross my mind to be an investment banker, whatever the hell that means anyways. Although for a short while, I did convince myself, like many Asian children do, that I want to be a doctor. But again, short-lived. But when I got to college, As is the case with many college students, I slowly discarded my dreams, sort of like a toy you've outgrown. I traded them in for things that other people around me wanted, things that were more realistic, things like prestige or high salary, you name it. And throughout this entire process, as I slowly discarded my dreams, whether I realized it or not, I was discarding parts of myself. The funny thing with dreams is that, or should I say interesting? The interesting thing with dreams is that they never truly leave you. They're a part of who you are at your core. And the same held true for me. As I graduated, as I started my adult life, my realistic life, I tried to forget about my dreams as much as possible, but they would manifest themselves in random moments. When I would get in the shower, or when I would look out the windows of my 37th floor, Midtown Manhattan glass prison cell, wishing I was anywhere in the world but there. So to be able to say, or rather tell all of you, that I have a YouTube channel is quite literally a childhood dream of mine come true. A childhood dream that I chose to make happen. A childhood dream that I choose to work on each and every day. And a dream that I'll choose to continue to work on. And just saying that out loud is such an incredibly empowering feeling. The last big decision that I chose to make during my first year of adulthood was deciding where to go next for my second job, or day job if you will. As I floated around the uncertainty that tends to be unemployment, I was thinking a lot about the sort of environment that I wanted to be a part of next. Because after all, when you come from the absolutely lovely environment that is investment banking, you start to think twice before you make any sort of brash decisions with your life. And I was fortunate enough to receive an offer from a startup earlier on during my recruitment process, but in all honesty, the opportunity just didn't feel quite right to me. I'm not sure how else to put it. And in the past, I probably would have listened to the rational part of my brain saying, Dennis, you're bleeding cash, paying New York City rent, take the damn job. But instead, for probably the second time in my entire life, the first being when I quit my job in investment banking, I chose to follow that gut feeling, to trust and bet on myself. And honestly, things worked out better than I could have ever envisioned. I was fortunate enough to happen upon an opportunity with WeWork, where I've actually been since the end of April. I'm in an environment surrounded by people who are incredibly kind and caring. People who genuinely empower me to just be me. When the topic of YouTube has come up in conversations, the genuine curiosity and support I've been shown has been so heartwarming. So to be able to say that I'm in a position where, let's be real, I'm able to pay New York City rent while also feeling empowered to just be me and pursue my creative pursuits is nothing short of a blessing that I'm beyond grateful for. And to be fair, while these external changes are important, and in all honesty, they were life-changing, and they probably would be what I tell someone if I was initially asked what happened during your first year as an adult, I honestly believe that they're more so a representation or tangible evidence of how I had to reinvent myself internally before I could reinvent my life externally. So what do I mean exactly by all of that? In the best way I can put it, I had to continue discovering and understanding who I truly am in order to live in alignment with my authentic self. To start, I had to identify what my core values are in life and in what order. And I'll probably make some more in-depth video about this some other time, but for now, let's leave it at that. Similarly, I had to identify what qualities I find meaningful and fulfilling in terms of the relationships I keep and the activities or endeavors I choose to partake in. This way, I could really be intentional with my decision making to ensure that I could live a life that is authentic to me. And in the process of identifying my core values and what I find meaningful and fulfilling, I was able to recognize what my purpose in life is, which, to be fair, had been in front of me this entire time. I just wasn't at a place yet with myself to be able to recognize it or to be able to take on the responsibility. But having found my North Star for the first time in my life, I feel like I can genuinely say that I'm headed in the right direction. A direction that I want to be in, a direction that I chose for myself. I'm the captain of my own ship, my own life, and I couldn't be more excited for the year to come. As I finish looking back on all the change this past year, both the internal and the external, there are 5 key lessons that I think span all of them. The first, which I know I've mentioned throughout my videos, but I believe is worth repeating, it's that your energy is incredibly precious, so get comfortable saying no. Because if there's anything you aspire to be great at in life, or you're just trying to live more authentically, both are entirely dependent on your ability to protect your energy and to say no. If you're constantly operating on empty or drained all the time, it's going to be a lot harder to be at your best when it matters in these situations. I totally get it. People have a hard time saying no. As someone who grew up a people pleaser, I struggle with saying no for much of my life. And as weird as it sounds, I honestly believe it's the skill that many of us have to develop and nurture over time. The earlier and more comfortable you get with saying no, the more equipped you'll be to be intentional with your decision making. Intentional decision making is absolutely essential to living a more authentic life. This plays into lesson number 2, which is stay true to your authentic self. There's a lot of pressure to behave and live in certain ways, to want certain things or have certain goals that'll be dependent on your age, your peer group, and so on. When you're in college, preparing for your adult life, or in your 20s, having just started adult life, this sort of pressure is going to be at its peak because people are still actively trying to figure themselves out, but instead of turning inward, they turn outward, looking to others to think and decide for them. Because more often than not, life and people just tend to be one massive echo chamber. And instead of choosing to actively remove themselves from the echo chamber, most people just perpetuate it out of fear of standing out, which to many people, standing out means being alone. Lo and behold, this plays into lesson number 3, which is get comfortable spending extended time alone. When you enter college, you're instantly bombarded with this messaging that it's the time to meet people. So naturally, what do? You constantly surround yourself with people. And this carries over into adult life, especially in your 20s, where there's a lot of pressure to be living an IG or TikTok worthy version of your best life, which more often than not entails being surrounded by people. When you're constantly surrounded by people, you're inevitably constantly surrounded by noise. And when you're surrounded by noise, it's significantly harder to be able to think clearly, to think objectively, to think for yourself. And when this happens, you get caught in the echo chamber, caught in the tides of life, unable to really determine for yourself if the tide is bringing you where you want to be, or if you should probably start swimming the other way. So seek true solitude intentionally and consistently. For true solitude gives you the time and space to be able to get away from the noise, to be able to think for yourself, ask the hard questions, have the hard conversations, all of which are entirely necessary to being able to direct yourself in a direction you generally want to be in. And on a less serious note, it's pretty damn freeing just being able to do whatever you want, whenever you want. I regularly eat out at restaurants alone, watch movies alone, explore the city alone. Things I would have never considered doing in college because I never got comfortable doing so. Never got comfortable spending time alone, or much less being intentional about it. And at the end of the day, I love spending time with people, don't get me wrong. The caveat being, it depends on the type of person. So if that type of person isn't available to hang out, I'm not just going to put my life on pause, forgo an opportunity to have a good time, because at the end of the day, I'm totally cool with spending time alone and can have a good time by myself. Although another person being there just elevates the experience. And what I've come to realize is that there'll be periods of time in life, especially as you start to live more authentically, during which there are going to be less people rather than more people who resonate with how you're trying to live, with the person you're aspiring to be. And it's during these periods of time you'll have to make a decision for yourself. Do I either wait around for others and be unhappy, or go out and just be happy alone? After all, lesson number 4, life is too short to be unhappy. At this point, this may as well be common knowledge, or honestly, scientific law at this point, but how many people actually embrace and live by this sentiment? When we're young, we tend to think of ourselves as invincible, as death is something that happens to old people or people with disease or illness, but not us. When in reality, death could be lurking right around the corner, right behind you, waiting to tap you on the shoulder. And yet, people choose to be unhappy for weeks, months, years, entire lifetimes, just perpetually stuck in shitty situations that are making them unhappy. Why? In hopes that their ability to just grind it out will be rewarded with a shot of happiness sometime in the distant future. Whether it's the next weekend, the next vacation, when there's another zero in the bank account, or when the kids are off to college. And to be fair, I was raised to believe this, and I did. Before I started my job in investment banking, I literally resigned myself to the fact that I'd probably be unhappy for 2 years of my life. And 2 years might not seem like a long time in the grand scheme of things, but 2 years of being unhappy is a long ass time. 2 years too long, honestly. And for what? So I could get a job in private equity, working 60 hours instead of 80, continuing to do the same work that is unfulfilling and meaningless to me. Maybe when I was living in accordance to other people's values, to other people's definition of success and happiness, anyone's but my own. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to excuse hard work or the ability to grind. Both are entirely necessary in order to be able to attain whatever version of success or happiness you ascribe to yourself. But there's a huge difference, a huge gap between working hard for the sake of working hard and working hard at something you care about on a fundamental level. One is just being busy, one is actually being productive. Whenever I catch up with people my age, the conversation almost always turns towards career. And while people may word things a little differently here and there, they might say, oh, when I finish this rotation, when I get promoted, when I get this bonus, then I'll leave, then I'll do X. But the message is the same. It's, I'm going to forego my own happiness and well-being in the short term for some long-term distant payoff. And every time I hear this, it absolutely breaks my heart, because ultimately, the more you put off your happiness in the short term, the more likely you're going to end up unhappy in the long term. So take a moment, or better yet, an afternoon, and seek some true solitude. Ask yourself the question, what does happiness mean to me? What does a life look like in which I'm living in alignment with my definition of happiness? And once you've done that, just go out and do it. The final lesson number 5, which I'm taking the phrasing of from Sahil Bloom, so check them out. It's overestimate a day, underestimate a year. When we think about growth or change, we tend to think about it from a long-term perspective, which, to be fair, it is more noticeable when you zoom out to the macro level. But ultimately, you come to realize that long-term growth or change happens at the micro level, the result of the compounding effects of daily habits or decisions made over a prolonged period of time. After all, you don't suddenly wake up tomorrow with a six-pack or the ability to identify what triggers your anxiety. And while it may start with that initial first step, that initial set of crunches, or that initial journaling or therapy session, without consistency, that first step honestly means nothing. So ask yourself the question, what can I not only start today, but continue doing day after day that future me will thank myself for in a year? And having just said that out loud, I've got to give August 2021 Dennis a ton of props for all the decisions he made this past year to get August 2022 Dennis to where and who he is today. Quite literally talking to all of you. And I don't say all this to try and improperly convey that I was having some sort of major breakthrough or realization each and every day. But what did happen each and every day was that I showed up. I showed up for myself to make the time and space to reflect, to look myself, to look life in the mirror, to ask myself the hard questions, to have the hard conversations, sort of like I'm encouraging all of you to do. And having done all this myself, I've been able to continually recalibrate and redirect my life in a direction that I genuinely want to be in, towards a life that is more authentic to me. Whenever I reflect back on the past, I'm only all the more grateful for the present. Grateful for all the growth, the changes, the lessons, the ups and the downs that got me to who and where I am in life today. But as grateful as I am for everything that's happened, I also want to take a moment and acknowledge just how proud of myself I am. Proud of myself for all the time, energy, and hard work I chose to put in day in and day out to get myself here, to put myself in a position to not only reinvent myself, but to reinvent my life. And while I sit here settling into my new apartment, settling into this second year of my adult life, I can't help but be excited for what's to come, for all the growth, the changes, and lessons that came just as they did this past year of my life. And while I can't claim to know or predict how or in what areas they'll show up, what I do know is that everything that happens will aid me in this pursuit of living a life that is more authentic to me. So with that, I'm incredibly excited for this upcoming year and to be able to bring you all on the journey, to be able to make a similar video 1 year from now in which August 2023 Dennis gets to reflect back and appreciate all the things and decisions that August 2022 Dennis made in the past year. With that, I want to thank you all again for your time and your continued support. Hopefully you were able to take away something from this video, and at the very least, I hope I've been able to encourage some of you to reflect back on your own life, to appreciate and be amazed at how far you've come in your own ways, and to be excited for the year to come. And if you're not amazed or excited yet, that can all change. After all, a year starts with a day. So why not make it today? I'll see you all in a year.
Fuck.